our friends who couldn't be here. So before we get started on our lesson today, I wanted to talk to us about these lima beans that we have. I want us to germinate the lima beans. Who remembers what germinate means? What does that mean, germinate? Does anyone remember what that means? It's a big word. Elliot? Close. It's where the seed begins to open up and part of the roots come out of the seed. That's called germinating. So I have here my paper towel and I've got it damp. Damp means it's just a little bit wet. It's not soaking wet, it's just a little bit wet. So I've got it damp and I'm going to put it inside my baggie. So I've got my baggie and I'm gonna put the damp paper towel inside my baggie. Just like this. Now I'm gonna take my 2 seeds and I'm gonna place them inside the baggie as well. So I've got the damp paper towel and I've got my 2 seeds. Then I'm going to seal my baggie. I'm gonna pinch this line at the top and I'm gonna seal it shut. Now I can tape my baggie to my windowsill and see how many days it takes for my seeds to germinate. Sound like fun? You try to observe them every day and see if you notice any changes in your lima bean seeds. I'm going to tape mine to our window here at school. All right. Here we go. If everyone will take a look behind me, we've learned about many different plant parts. Let's review some of the names of all the important plant parts. So, let's let Smearty in. And I'm gonna mute my friends. We're gonna mute our microphones. Okay. What's your question?
Today, why did we only have 2 calls?
Because you were gonna do ice station in the morning.
Oh.
All right. So let's take a look right here. Who can tell me what this part of our plant is called? Down here at the bottom. You can't see it because it's underground. Ooh. Russell, what's that part called?
Root.
The roots. Russell, you're exactly right. These are the roots of the plant. What do we call this skinny part right here that holds the plant upright? Adeline?
A stem.
The stem. All right. What do we call these green thingies that hang off the side? Nicole?
Leaf.
Leaves. Very good. What do we call this yellow pretty part? Anya?
The blossom.
The blossom. Or the flower. We'll just put flower. We'll do that. But that's right. Either word is correct. And what's this last part in the middle?
Seed.
You can make... Let's raise our hands. Smearty?
Seed.
Seeds. You're right. So we've just labeled all the parts of our plant. Very good. Today, we're going to learn more about flowers. Many animals like flowers just like people do. Did you know that animals like flowers? Today, we'll get a chance to listen to a special guest. We're going to have a guest narrator. Her name is Polly the honeybee. Polly loves flowers. Today, we'll hear about how Polly and her honeybee friends help flowers. Okay, I see a few people with their hands up. Anya, what's your question?
I just forgot to put my hand down.
Oh, okay. Carolyn? Carolyn?
Why you have two big, one small and one big one?
I just gave you two. If you want to just germinate one, you can. Russell, did you have a question?
No. No?
Okay. All right. Let's take a look. I'm going to change our slide. Here are some vocabulary words I want us, that's weird. My slide's not turning. I want us to look at. This word is nectar. Can you say nectar?
Nectar.
Nectar is kind of like the juice that comes from the flower. Honeybees love the nectar. The nectar is like a Capri Sun out of a flower, and they love to slurp it up. The next word we have on here is pollen. Can you say pollen?
Pollen.
Pollen, very good. Pollen is the powdery stuff that is in the center of the flower. Look at this bee right here. Let me circle it with my red marker so you can see. See how there's a yellow puff on his leg? That's because the pollen sticks like Velcro to the honeybee's leg. Now, that is very important because the honeybee then flies to a different flower, and that is called pollination. The honeybee sips the nectar from this flower. Then he gets pollen stuck, he gets that yellow pollen stuck on his legs, and he flies to another flower. When he flies to that other flower, the pollen falls off of his leg into the new flower, and that is called pollination. You're going to hear more about that word as we read. Yes, Adeline?
Why do flowers need water?
Why do flowers need water? Remember, flowers need 4 things to grow: food, air, sunlight, and water. Okay. Let's listen carefully to learn how Polly, isn't she cute, and her honeybee friends help flowers. Hello, my name is Polly. I'm a honeybee. I live in a beehive in a meadow not too far from here. Your teacher asked me to come here today to tell me more about flowers, to tell you more about flowers, my favorite part of plants. As you have learned, flowers contain seeds, and seeds can grow into new plants. I'm delighted to come and tell you about flowers because flowers are one of my favorite things in the whole world. The meadow near my beehive is full of all different kinds of flowers that come in many different colors. See the flowers behind her in the meadow? Earlier today, I visited a particularly delicious yellow flower. Come along and I'll show it to you. Why do you think Polly describes the flower as delicious. Why is she calling the flower delicious? Ryan.
Because there's honey in it.
That's it. Honeybees make honey, but there's not honey in the flower. There's something else. We just talked about it. I wouldn't expect you to know.
Pollen.
Not pollen, nectar.
Nectar.
There is pollen in the flower, but honeybees like nectar. Okay. Here's the flower I was telling you about. Do you see this ring of bright yellow parts around the flower? Right here. Right here. Those are called petals. The petals look like brightly colored leaves. Petals are part of the flower that grab my attention when I'm buzzing around. Once I see a pretty flower, my favorite thing to do is crawl inside the petals to the center of the flower. What's it like to crawl inside a flower like this? Imagine for a minute that you are crawling under a bright yellow blanket of a very comfortable bed. Bright yellow is all around you. Now imagine that you stay under the blankets drinking the world's tastiest drink through a straw. You are so happy that you wiggle around and get covered with yellow powder that smells great and feels good against your skin. That's what it's like for me when I visit a flower. So how do you think Polly feels when she visits a flower? How does Polly feel? Elliot?
Good.
Yeah, she feels really good and happy and excited. She feels good. All right. As far as I'm concerned, the world's tastiest drink is called nectar. It's a sweet juice that plants make. And the yellow powder that I like to rub against is called pollen. I found both nectar and pollen inside flowers, and frankly, I'm not sure which one I like better. I visit more than 50 flowers in one outing, sometimes as many as 100. I visit these flowers because we bees get our food from flowers. My job is to fly around and find nectar and pollen, which I gather up and take back to my hive. I have a special pouch inside my body that holds the nectar. And there are special hairs on my back legs that form a little basket that I brush pollen into. When it's time to go back to my hive, sometimes my load of pollen and nectar weighs half as much as I do. So think about that for a minute. See the pollen stuck to her legs? If it weighs half as much as she does, is it going to be heavy for her? Is that pollen going to be heavy? Yeah, it is. If it weighs half as much as she does, that's pretty heavy. So it's every time she goes to a flower, her legs get heavier and heavier because they get more covered in pollen. Do you have a question, are we?
Why is the bee wearing a hat?
Well, this is a non-fiction text, but it has some fiction in it. That's why she's wearing a hat. Can bees really talk to us, and do they really have names like Polly? No. But the information that Polly is telling us about the flower is true. Nicole.
You know what? My backyard has a bee hive in my dad.
Let's make sure that we're asking a question. But that's great, Nicole. That's great. Anya?
Which part in the flower is the nectar?
Okay, so it's like deep inside. See this part on the inside? It's like inside there. Very good. When I get back to the hive, I turn the nectar and pollen over to the worker bees in the hive. They mix the pollen with a little bit of nectar and feed it to the baby bees. Then they fan the rest of the nectar with their wings until most of the water is gone. The nectar, with most of the water gone, turns into something both bees and people love. What do you think it turns into?
Honeydew.
Raise your hand. What do you think it turns into? Grant?
Honey.
Honey, you're exactly right. The nectar, when the water is gone and it's dried, turns into honey. Here's the honey in my hive. People use honey to sweeten their food, but we bees use honey for food. We keep it in a bunch of little cubbies. We like to call them a honeycomb. So this right here is called a honeycomb. I visit flowers to get food, and that's reason enough for me. But it turns out that I'm also doing something else besides finding food for myself and other bees. I'm helping the plants reproduce or make more plants. In order to make a seed that can develop into a new plant, most plants need to mix pollen from their own flower with pollen from other plants that are like them. Remember, pollen is the little bit of yellow powder. For example, a corn plant needs pollen from another corn plant to allow it to make seeds. When pollen from one corn plant lands on another plant, something called pollination takes place. Pollination is really important. If it doesn't happen, the plant won't be able to make any seeds. And if there are no seeds, there will be no new plants. How do plants get pollen from one plant to another? Plants can't walk around like human beings, and they can't flap their wings and fly like us bees either. Luckily, the pollen grains themselves are very small. They can be blown from one plant to another by the wind. Look right here. See these little dots? That's the pollen, and the wind is blowing the pollen from the flower to another flower. So the wind helps to pollinate plants so they can make new plants. But bees like me also help pollinate plants. How do my trips from one plant to another help pollinate plants? How does that help? How does her visiting one plant and then flying and visiting another plant, how does that help pollinate them? Ooh, I've got some smart friends. They're thinking hard. Smearty?
The bees can carry the pollen and put it to another flower.
Yes, the bees can carry the pollen that's stuck to their legs, and when they land in one flower and then land in another, they carry that pollen to that other flower. Very good. When I visit a flower and roll inside it, I pick up a lot of pollen. When I fly to the next flower, I carry some pollen from other flowers with me, and some of it rubs off on the next flower I visit. That's why I am an excellent pollinator of plants. That's why they call me Polly the Pollinator. I don't like to brag, but we bees are the most important pollinators in the world. Oh sure, the wind helps to pollinate, and some other insects also carry grains of pollen from one plant to another as they feed. Butterflies do the same thing. So do moths, beetles, wasps, and even some birds like a hummingbird are also good pollinators. Bats are good pollinators too, but no other creature pollinates as many flowers as bees do. So what pollinates more plants, the wind or bees? What pollinates more plants? Estelle?
The bees.
The bees. Remember when Polly said that she visits 50 to 100 plants a day? That's a lot. Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys some questions, but before we do that, let's take a movement break. So I'm gonna pull up a Go Noodle activity, and we will take a quick movement break. Ooh, that was loud. We get to go to the Transformation-a-Jigger and pick a new character.
That's what I did too.
Wow, we maxed him out. So let's choose. Who would you guys like to be? We have choices of Tangy Badangy, Bartleby Trunks, Shane Fonda, and Van Gogh. So raise your hand if you want this one. Okay, raise your hand if you want this one. Raise your hand if you want this one. Raise your hand if you want this one. Okay, I saw the most hands for Tangy Badangy. So we're gonna pick Tangy Badangy. And we're gonna do a movement dance. Stand up out of your seat and get your wiggles out.
And can you tell what
Hey everybody, this is Steve-O here from Next Generation Dance Fusion. I am also the choreographer for Laser Fresh. And I'm here with Laser Fresh themselves, Mr. Onslaught, Xavier, and my man Rashid. And we are going to take you through the hottest dance now right now, the floss. So, here's what I would like for you guys to do. You guys ready? Yes, you ready? Okay, so you're going to take your hands and you're going to put them out in front of you like you have a stick. Now put it down towards your hips and turn it a little bit out this way. Now what I want you to do is I want you to break the stick with your hip, pull it back out, switch, and then break the stick on the other side with your hip, and then pull it back out. There you go. So let's do that slow. Cross, break, out, cross, break, out. Nice. Ready? Cross, break, out, cross, break, out. Faster, please. Cross, break, out, cross, break, out, cross, break, out, cross, break, out. Oh, y'all like professionals. I mean, okay, let's speed that up. 5, 6, 7, hit it. Cross, break, out, cross, break, out. Not that fast. Cross, break, out. All right, you got that? I know what you're waiting for. Some music. Can I get some music, DJ Robbie Rob? 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cross, break, out. Cross, break, out. Cross, break, out. Cross, break. What? You want us to speed up? Oh, they want us to speed up. Speed it up. Cross, break, out, break, out. Cross, break, out. Cross, break, out. Cross, break, out. Cross, break, out. Slow. Speed it up. Hey. They ready? Yeah, ready. And that is the floss. Thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned. See you and stay laser fresh. Yeah. One more for the road. One more for the road? I know you're like, I learned it today. Look at me, Bob. I'm flossing. What do they say?
Okay. Tangy Badangy says, I had a hot dog for breakfast. Psych, I had some Boss granola. Okay. So let's go back to our PowerPoint real quick. And I'm gonna ask you some questions. So let's go back to our first meeting with Polly. Right here. Where are the petals in this picture? What color are the petals in this picture?
Yellow.
They are yellow. They are yellow. Thank you. That's the, why do bees visit flowers? What do the flowers tell the bees? What do the petals? Thank you for raising your hands. Nicole?
Because there are bee food.
Yes, the bright colors of the flower attract the bees to it. This is a flower that Ryan brought to me the other day, and I've been watering it in my classroom. But you can kind of see, here is the center part of the flower, and that's where the pollen and nectar are, deep inside there. All right. So the color attracts them. What is the nectar in the flower? What's the nectar? What is nectar? Let's see. Ryan, what's nectar?
The pollen, the liquid.
It's the liquid. It's the good juice. So pretend like, say nectar, and pretend like you're drinking a straw. Nectar. Nectar. That helps me remember. Okay. What is pollen? Oh, Anya has a plant. Let me see that, Anya. It
hasn't grown yet.
Nope, it's just sprouted. It's a seedling. All right. What is pollen? What is pollen? Who can tell me what pollen is? Who can I call on to tell me about pollen? Russell, what's pollen?
Pollen is a little dot. Bees get pollen to another flower so they can make seeds.
Very good. So pollen is the powder. Think of it like powder. It's a little powder that's inside the flower. How do bees collect nectar and pollen? Where does the pollen go on the bees once they're in the flower? How does the pollen stick to them, or where does the pollen stick? Estelle?
I'm part of their special thing.
It sticks to their legs. Remember they said they have hairy legs, and pollen sticks to it like Velcro. So pollen sticks to the legs. So my next question, how do bees help pollinate flowers? Russell talked about it a little bit, but how does a bee help pollinate a flower? What does it do? Adeline, what does it do? What does the bee do to help pollinate the flower? Unmute your mic, Adeline. Does it fly from one flower to another flower? Yeah. It visits 50 to 100 flowers a day. And that pollen that's on its legs falls off when they roll in the new flower. That's how flowers are pollinated. Why is it important to pollinate flowers? Why do we want to pollinate flowers? Johnian, why do we want to pollinate flowers? What happens? Can a flower grow if it's not pollinated? No. We have to pollinate the flowers in order for it to grow and make new seeds. Polly gave the example of a cornfield. Corn cannot grow just by planting the seed. A bee has to pollinate it, or some other animal. in order for it to grow to a mature or adult plant. All right, you guys, I'm gonna do one last question. Well, we already talked about it. Very good. All right. That's it for today for our listening and learning. You do not have an assignment to turn in, but I will see you guys tomorrow. If you have not completed Ice Station, try to get that done. Bye-bye. Yes? Yes? Yeah, show me something.
It's a Harry Potter set my brother just got.
Does he love those books?
You have to read them a lot.
Yeah, they're wonderful. They're wonderful. Oh, wow. Look at all that. Is he going to build it?
I'm going to help him.
Oh, that's you'll have to show us the finished product.
Miss K,
Yes.
I have a robot that I couldn't even do it because it's for 6-year-old and I don't even know how to